Hi, it's Doug DeVitru with the Co-Track Pro podcast, and today we have a very special guest, Karen Omand with the Omand, sorry, with the divorce workshop. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you, Doug, for having me on.
Well, I was attracted to your work. You've got a podcast. You've been doing this for a long time. Tell us how you got into working with such a high stressful situation for families.
Well, like most of us who are in this field now, it's because I went through my own high conflict divorce. And I am a thanatologist, actually. So I'm a grief counselor educator. And it kind of started there. I went to a legal workshop before I left my marriage, and they said, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm a thanatologist." And they said, "What's that?" Like everybody does. And I said, "Well, that's a grief counselor and educator." And then they said, "There's a lot of grief," and so that kind of stuck in my head. And then over the years, I said, there's something missing here, and I found that there was a lot of lack of awareness of what a divorce actually feels like, looks like. And so that's why we put together a divorce workshop, which is over 5 years ago now.
Yeah, no, that's really amazing. And I think in some cases, families need to attend a marriage prep, right? Especially if you're in the Catholic religion, you have to do this Catholic prep. But now it's like, okay, well, how do I prepare myself for divorce? Which is there's so many emotions that are going. So tell us what the process is like when you work with one of your clients.
Well, most of them are unaware, right? Or they're in it and they're like, I didn't know this, I didn't know this. And I want to be real with everybody. When I went through it, and I'm a child of high conflict divorce years and years ago, I thought, oh, I know how to get through this, right? I had no idea. And so I'm not surprised that this is still happening, that they had no idea. So how I work on with them is one of the bases is strategy, right? Like but most of divorce is 95%. We hear 95% emotional, right? And that's 5% legal. I mean, legal is very important and financial is very important, but the emotion part is very, very important. And that's kind of where I'll help them figure that out. But also, there's a huge grief component that isn't talked about enough. And so then I also work with clients as well that are going through heavy grief, right? Because for some, half of the people, or unless it's very amicable, they've been left, right? And so there's a huge grief component there that I usually get referred to as well. So I work on strategy, I work on the grief, and in high conflict grief too, which is kind of a newer thing. So that's how I work. And then, of course, my another real passion was the workbook because we wanted to make it affordable for everybody, right? Because not everybody can afford to see the counselors, the coaches, when they have a lot of bills coming from them in divorce. So that's why we wrote the workbook just separated to try to help everybody become aware of what actually divorce is like. So I don't know if that answers all of it, but
Yeah, no, it's
some of
really
it.
great. What I love, what I was attracted to your work is you have a workbook, right? Like an actual process. So it's not just a one hour and done type of conversation. There are multiple stages. So maybe you can walk us through some of those stages or sections in the workbook for to set the tone for some parents.
Yeah, so the first chapter is we had to stew on that a long time. It's called Insights, and that's the insights of what it actually gets to go through a divorce, right? So it's kind of like you realize that divorce isn't fair, right? Or another one is the business of divorce. So it's full, Insights is full of all these things that you're like, really, this is what it's about? And there's like, I don't know, for Insights, there's about, I don't know, 5 or 6 workouts, we call them, which are exercises, right? So it's learning the insights of what actually divorce is like. And so that could be surprising for a lot of people because, as I said before, if you have no idea what it's like to go through divorce, you're kind of surprised that we say divorce isn't fair. It tries to be fair, but in reality, it's not fair, right? Like it's really like it's not always going to be perfectly 50-50 with everything. And then we did legal information. It's not legal advice, it's just legal information. Do you need a mediator? What to look for a mediator, look for a lawyer. Um, what questions to ask a lawyer? And there's actually one of our gold standard workouts is called who are you divorcing? And it's like you kind of have to figure out what type of person you're divorcing because that can make difference in what you get. Do you need a lawyer? Do you need a mediator? But also we ask, who are you? Right. So you have to reflect
Mm.
on how you are in a divorce, right? So it's like, oh, who are you? Oh, okay. Because we also, for most people, have responsibility for the divorce, right? So that's one of the main ones in legal information. And then there's the third chapter, which is emotions, which I talked about as 95%, but there's anger, anxiety, the guilt, the grief, right? And so there's exercises in there. Like one of them is on the top of my head is the layers of loss. And so you have to go through all the losses you're feeling because most of us don't understand that we're feeling a lot of loss. And then the fourth one is financial information. Again, it's just information about learning to budget. Do you need a financial advisor? Are you being financially abused? It's one of the workouts for there. And then co-parenting is unit 5, and that one's really full and tons of exercises. Are you a good co-parent? Are you a reject? Like, do you think you're being too protective over your parenting, co-parenting? Like, so that one's full of a lot of exercises. And then the last one's recovery, which is everyone's favorite, but you got to work through the first 5 before you can, get into the recovery. But recovery is a really good unit. We have one of our favorite exercises is me to we. And it's this you were who you were before, who you were in the marriage, and how to rebuild yourself after. So it is
Mm.
full of over 55 workouts. And because of my education, being that I'm a thanatologist and I have CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, a lot of that goes into this book. And it's all graphically, it's not a workbook as in at your college or university. It is graphically pleasing and also easy to do because we know when you're going through divorce, it is tough. So that's it in a quick nutshell. I don't know if that's good enough, but
That's so good. It's just amazing the amount of intention that you've put into this process, and especially where the individual who's seeking help, right, can take an honest assessment of kind of their current situation. How often do you find where parents are maybe unrealistic in their expectations or maybe the current situation and need some guidance, right, to help set proper expectations and boundaries because the way you're operating before just really isn't realistic.
well, that's very common, right? I'm sure you've heard that from other people. What I love about the workbook is if they're having a problem, they can go in and co-parenting and just look at one page and go, okay, so I am being a bit upset that when they're spending times with the other co-parent, they're not getting enough vegetables, and that has happened, right? Where one co-parent gets upset that the other co-parent isn't feeding them enough vegetables on the time that they have with them. And then realistically, you have to learn you can't control what the other co-parent does in their house, as long as they're safe and secure, right? So, yeah, it's a co-parenting is a huge challenge. It again, and we often say too, it's also another business thing, right? The business of co-parenting, and that's what you're trying to get at to become civil and to have a really nice co-parenting relationship, but that can take time.
Yeah, sure. What do you see some of the roadblocks that kind of get in the way to effective co-parenting?
Um, Roadblocks. Well, it depends who you're divorcing, right? So, it can be struggle with time, right? Like these people fight over time, lack of flexibility, right? So, if the kids weren't dropped right at 6 o'clock, well, then they're going to get angry. And so flexibility, lack of time, ego, right? Like ego, that can be letting the children have fun, right? But that the parents, they kind of can get jealous. Also, in my own situation, when I was a child, I was the messenger. So I was told
Mm.
by one to tell the other one this. I was also given the checks to give to my mother. Like it was so awful that I was put in that situation. That's another thing. Also, finding out information about that other parent. So who's your dad dating? What's she like? Like that's none of the child's business. They're there. That is not their job, right? So there's a lot of mismessaging that goes on. I mean, it depends if you're in a high conflict situation, that even is more challenging
Yeah,
for the parents, like the one parent, the co-parent. So yeah.
sure. Well, you obviously have this workbook, but then you also have this workshop, which I love, which I imagine gives participants a better opportunity to explore some of these exercises within a shared closed community.
Yeah, we actually we're starting that. I have a workshop coming up in January. It's a free workshop. It's I don't it's called it's people pleasing, because the problem is appeasers, we call them, or the fawn response. So we're doing a workshop like that. I've done other things like that, but they're not recorded on the divorce workshop. But yeah, the workshops are great, because people really need to be in the moment. And I love the fact that with the exercises too, that it helps them. And it's just not me talking, it's us engaging with them. So that's the thing with the workshop, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really good. What are some of the success stories you've had? And I know it's kind of like, where is there success in divorce, right? But like, what do you see some of the things that you know that you have maybe prevented, right?
So
Or even
yeah,
corrected?
well, so the thing that I really love about all the work is I look for micro things. Like I look for, a lot of times when they talk to me, they're like, oh, and I'm like, and I pick out these little things that they've actually done really well, and they go, oh yeah, I have done that well. Right? Like, because in divorce, we beat up ourselves a lot. We feel like failures. There's a lot of shame, a lot of guilt for some. So I teach them a lot about self-compassion. So when I see them doing little micro things, especially in the grief, the ones that are heavy in grief, I am so proud of them. And I reflect that back, and then they start rebuilding. It is like divorce is what the second biggest stress in life, right? Death is the first, obviously, but it's like rebuilding a house and your foundation is cracked. And it takes time. And I don't think there's enough support out there for people that are going through divorce in general. I think we're getting better, but I still think we need more. If you think about how disenfranchised divorce is, right? Like there's a common thing, well, so many people are getting divorced. They don't need a lot of support. I mean, the 52 or 56% of people are divorcing. So why do they need support? They chose this, right? Well, just because you choose it or whatever, it doesn't make it hard, and it's not needed support systems, right? So
Yeah.
that's how and I wish I had that for myself, and I wish my mom had it for herself, right? Because there's not enough, I'm 8 years post and I didn't have enough back then. I think it's getting better, but I still think we need more.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess we've maybe have come a long way, from the last 10 years with technology and being able to scheduling and making things a little bit more concrete. But there's still that ambiguity, right? When you not necessarily know what to do, especially if the court order says one thing and another thing's something else is happening. What can you do to kind of get in front of that?
To get in front, well, I think you have to prepare in your mind for anything. I think we go into court, and I did myself with an expectation of what's going to happen. And I think you have to kind of prepare yourself for all different scenarios of what could happen. And I think if you imagine and prepare even weeks ahead, um, your reaction could be less, right? Um, I had this assumption in my own court case. Well, the judge is going to see exactly what's happening here. He didn't care and he did not, but I wasn't even prepared for that, right? So I think if you can kind of have the lay of the land of what could, like a couple, we call it like bingo, like, okay, this scenario here could happen, this scenario here could happen, this scenario here could happen. And I think if you can imagine all that, you can prepare for the emotional part of it anyways. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. I've never heard that analogy of bingo, but yeah, every time you hit a it's a hit a combination, it's a surprise.
Yeah,
Um,
if you're dealing with someone that is more on the high conflict personality, you might want to like you've been married to that person, but you may want to go, okay, so I may get this today, B or C. I may hit bingo B, or you know what I mean, like bingo 24. Like that's the problem, right? Because you don't know. Anyway, it's
yeah,
just a little idea there. There.
yeah. Well, with the technology changing so rapidly, what are you most excited about for families, and what are you also most afraid of? So you can take that in two different two different bites.
Um, Technology is awesome. in so many ways, right? Because I think access is easier, right? Like they can get help right away. Your program, right? So you're not left kind of floundering as much. Um, the the bad side or the other side is, well, I still want human connection. And that's kind of my, we are creatures that need face to face or even us interacting, right? And so that's kind of my worry about technology. As much as I love it, I still think they need community. We still
Yeah.
need the support of people, not just AI, right? So I love them both, but they both have a major purpose for me.
Sure. And I think a lot of folks are still trying to figure it out in terms of how it aligns with their values, right? Or maybe how they've been taught, or maybe the attorney, how they've been taught in school, or maybe they even teach for university. It's changing quite rapidly. And for the kids' sake, right? And this is kind of why we do what we do is to support our children. What are you most excited about for them? Or maybe what are you most fearful for them because they have so many more options than we did when we were kids?
Yeah, I think for children, I did hear, and I'm sure you know this better than I, but in Saudi Arabia, they're teaching the kids in primary school AI. Like they are starting really young. I don't think it's going anywhere. So I think as you said, it's speeding up, and I think kids need to learn to adapt and to use it as a tool for them to advance. Um, Again, the other side of it is because in my world, we need to have meaning, right? So I kind of
Mhm.
worry if they're going to have meaning enough, right? So it's as again, I love that, and I also worry about that, right? Because we as humans, we need connections, but we also need to make meaning in life. And so that meaningful things is doing something like you love what you're doing. I love what I'm doing. They also need to figure out what they love, what they're going to do. And I'm just hoping they're still able to do some of it.
Yeah, I love that. What are some of the resources that you would recommend for people to check out? And you've got the workbook, you've got you can get they can contact you for a strategy session. I'm sure there's ongoing support. Tell us
Yeah.
more about that.
So I have my own podcast as well. Love to have you on. It's called Just Separated. So I talk to everybody and holistically, like I want every aspect of divorce covered, not just legal, because I find it so much bigger than that. Obviously, the workbook that's on Amazon, they can get a free 22-page sample if they want to see it on our webpage. Also, the workshop, the one's coming up in January, and I think we're going to make that into actual paid workshop because this phone response is really common. And I'm trying to think of, yeah, and the strategy call is I have a free consultation. It's a large half hour. As I say, it always goes over. And also, if they're grieving a lot too, I'm also can help too as well.
Yeah, no, you're in Canada, right? You can work virtual just like I can, and I think that's a tremendous advantage to what we could do before. Karen, thanks so much for being a part of the CoTrack podcast. We'll make sure that we include all the resources in the show notes, and we appreciate you and everything that you do for the community.
Thank you, Doug, for having me on. It's important that we continue pushing ahead and helping as many people as we can, especially through this.
Yeah, thanks.